So my name is Sabine Bowers, and if you want to get any more information about the presentation, I prepared the information in that presentation. You can just contact me. You find my details in the membership directory. So please feel free to contact me directly and ask about any of the stuff you're hearing. So I've done some research, some digging into what's involved in aging in Germany, either at home, so if you stay in your current residence, or should you move to a residential care home? Because that's a big question. My own mom went through this, and I've had some experience with that. And before we get started into the core of the presentation, I'd like Anitra to go to the slide 14, because I've prepared a few annex slides, which give you, from this slide onwards, from slide 14 on, give you useful terminologies, because I didn't want to translate the German words for the appropriate care levels. I wanted to keep them in German because that's what you need to discuss when you start getting into this. But here are the translations of it, or the explanations of what they are. Pflegegrad, Pflegegeld, Pflegesachleistung, Entlastungsgeld. It sounds a bit of a maze when you just hear me talk about them, but here you can read up from slide 14 to slide 19. On 19, you can read up in peace and quiet about what do these things all mean, and what am I even talking about exactly. So yeah, and the individual topics are quite complex. Okay. Right, so I leave you all to sort of read up on that terminology at the end of the presentation. You can do that in your own time. Let's get started with why start with the Pflegegrad and Schwerbehinderung. Why do I start with this slide? Well, it's about stock taking. So how much assistance do I or the person I'm living with need? Is it physical assistance? Is it mental assistance? There could be onset of dementia, Alzheimer, or depression coming along with age. You need to sort of start to ask yourself questions. Do I actually need help? And is it physical help, or is it financial help? And based on the answer to that question, you need to make a decision. Can I afford to stay at home? Afford in terms of mental stress and physical stress? Or should I really look for a care home that can give me right away some assistance in your current living situation? And depending on the answer to your question, you will sort of then be able to better decide, well, maybe I should stay at home, but I can access care at home and don't need to move to a care home where I'm out of my comfort zone and have to meet all sorts of new people and everything. So the decision will look different depending on the amount of information you have and how you feel about it. Okay, next slide. The Pflegegrad. Why go for Pflegegrad? That's the level of care you might be able to access. So the next slide says, why Pflegegrad? Because it helps. I found out in my research that getting a Pflegegrad allocated, so the level of how much care you need, gives you access to monetary aid, or to people who can help you with this care. So it's for physical aid or psychological and mental aid. So depending on what you've experienced, say for example, you or your partner had a stroke, and therefore there's a certain disability coming in line. You should look into getting a care level allocated, because that helps with giving you, like I said, an external helper, or it can mean financial relief for the person who cares for the person with a stroke or another disability. So if you're looking, for example, after a disabled mom or dad, then you could be eligible for some money, but the person who you're looking after has to ask for that help. So and then there's also money available for things like walking assistance, incontinence supplies, anything that you normally would just say, oh, well, I'm just going to the drugstore and buy my the incontinence pads or whatever. You know, you don't have to pay for this on your own. You can get assistance with out-of-pocket expenses, and you can invoice them and reclaim that money. Okay, let's go to the next slide. We all pay, everybody who is in Germany pays in one way or another into the Pflege insurance. So we all have a right to access this money. This is not socially needy people. Everybody who has a need to get some care has a right to access that care. There are some websites, I've mentioned them here. You can use the link when you go to the presentation, that help you assess, well, would I be eligible? I don't know, but this helps you assess, well, would I be eligible, and if so, well, what would I get? And it's completely anonymous. You don't commit to anything. It's free of charge. You just go into this link and work your way through that questionnaire, and then it comes up with an answer. Yeah, we think you would be eligible for a care level. Next step, I would highly recommend, call your Krankenkasse. Call your Krankenkasse because they have a legal obligation to give you advice. The state says the Krankenkasse has to help. There's no expense involved. There is no commitment involved. They should help, and they will help. And every time I've made a call to the Krankenkasse, honestly, they have been super helpful. And again, if you're needing any assistance with stuff like that, you know, if you say, well, my German isn't really up to scratch for that, well, give me or anybody in the club a shout and see whether you can get somebody to help you with making that call. Through this aging group that Anitra called to life, we found that, you know, as women, we can help each other to get through this maze of, well, what do we need to do? And also help with language issues, if there are any. Then I've heard that making a diary of the care that is given or the care that is needed really helps. So on a daily basis, have a look, well, how much do I really need to assist the person in my care? Do I need to assist with getting dressed or getting food or getting onto a tram because that person can no longer walk very comfortably in certain environments and things like that? Make a diary. What you can also do is you can ask for Pflegedienst. This is the service that would eventually be paid for caregiving. You can ask them to come in and help you assess this need. And again, they will do that free of charge because they, at the end of the day, hope that you will then use them to give that care, to provide that care. So I think it's using a service that's there to assess, well, how much need do you really have? Plus, they have a really good view of how to negotiate this whole maze of caregiving. And they will, in my experience, and my sister, who has a husband who needs care, are super helpful. Then eventually an assessor comes, and that's an official way of then getting your Pflegegrad or the Pflegegrad of the person in care. And they will look at all this, your diary, and ask questions, etc. You could even again ask the Pflegedienst, this care service, to be there with you to help and explain and reinforce examples you give of the care needed. And then they will give you a formal assessment, and that formal assessment gets renewed depending on how urgent your care is, how much care you need. It'll be 3 months, and if it's less urgent than 6 months, every 6 months they reassess, because with age things tend to get worse. So it's actually really important that it gets reassessed. Okay, next slide. Schwerbehindert. That's disabled, disability. Wait a second, I'm not disabled. Well, again, that is actually debatable, because when I looked into this, next slide, please, I was again prompted by my own experience, my own sister who looked into this for her own husband. I found that actually disability can be things like diabetes, heart disease, if you had a heart attack or your partner had a heart attack, stroke, disability deriving from cancer that you had or your partner or whatever had, asthmatic disease, depression, tinnitus, many, many more illnesses, if you want, also count towards a disability. So this is independent of what I've discussed just before. The Pflegegrad is one thing. The disability is a grade, and once it's assessed, it stays with you. It can get worse, and therefore you should reassess your disability from time to time. But it stays with you, and it gives you certain benefits depending on the grade of your disability. So if you, like my husband, had a heart attack or a couple of heart attacks, then you're not really physically that disabled throughout most of your life. You're not emotionally disabled, etc. But you might get access to some rebates for participation in social life. So you get a rebate on going to museums, to theaters, to cultural events, and you can get a tax reduction around 1,000 euros a year. So that's not, it's not to be sniffed at. But it's mainly to have already registered that something with your health or your loved one's health isn't as it should be permanently, and therefore you can be you are classified as having a disability. Okay, and it's worth getting that reassessed from time to time. Okay, then we go to the next question. Then, for having looked at this Pflegegrad and the disability, you ask yourself, okay, should I now having assessed, well, how much is my need for care? What do I get if I get a care level, a Pflegegrad, if I get Schwerbehinderung level? Having assessed all that and the level of care available to me, should I move to a residence or a care home, or should I stay at home? That big question. Okay, staying at home. What's involved in staying at home? Well, it's from the level of care you get, and from probably your emotional level. The probably most comfortable solution is to stay at your own home, where you are, whether it's rented or owned, it doesn't matter. That's often preferred also from the state, because you can get care in your home, and you don't have to move to a new place where you have to learn a new neighborhood, make new friends and all that. It can be something you want, but it is not, so often it's something you don't want to do because you like to stay where you are. Or maybe you're deciding, well, at the moment I'm living really far out, and if I ever need care, then and need to have access to friends who can help, then you know, I'm a bit far out, and people always need to drive to see me. And if my disability gets worse, then I can no longer drive, and find taking long S-Bahn journeys or train journeys onerous. Then maybe you also decide, well, actually, maybe I should move into a more central location where I have easier access to all those services and also don't need to drive. Financially, staying at home might be the easiest option, honestly, because it's, you know, that I'll go later into how much residential care homes cost, but it might be the easiest option for you to stay where you are and then access from where you are the level of care. Other important consideration: can you still see friends and family if you stay at home but are less mobile? So that might make you say, okay, I want to stay in my own home, but I might want to move into a more central location. Can you still participate in social life, go to shops, go to cultural events if you become less able to move around? Whether it's yourself who cannot move around or your partner who can no longer move around with ease. Those all then depend on your decision. Should I stay where I am? Should I move to a more central location? Or should I move to a residential home and start to become part of that environment before you know, things start to deteriorate in my care level? If you own your own home, things start to get a little bit more complex, and you want to stay in your own home, but you need money to get additional care. You could, for example, sell your own home. Now this is getting into something that doesn't interest everybody, so skip through that part if you don't own your own home. But you can sell your own home with the right to use your own home, to stay in your home until you die. That means you get capital to pay for the care you need. Any shortfall you may have can get covered out of that capital you free up from your own home whilst you're still living there. Okay, then I'll explain a little bit more about that in 3 slides on. Next slide. If you decided to move to a residence and care home, so if you did now decided, well, I think in the long term, we're probably better off if we start looking around now to see what care homes are available, what residences are available. And actually, if you start looking around at what's available, that may help you also now to make a decision. Would you want to do that? Or do you really not like the look of what you then would be moving into? So I would suggest to anyone to have a look around now before you know, your need is urgent, because you're not under stress. Now you can actually look around and say, oh, I quite fancy this location and I like what's on offer. I like what they're doing. Or you can decide, no, this is not for me. I want to find a way of staying in my own home. Do it now and then leave a note for your nearest and dearest on what you have decided. If in an emergency something goes wrong, you start to have a terrible illness, you need to go to hospital, and then after that you need care. If in an emergency the ones closest to you need to understand what it is you would like, they need to understand, would you like to move to a place, or would you then like to go back to your own home but get care at home? So it's much easier for everyone if you've left a note of what you want to do. You can move anywhere. So if you're currently living in I don't know, in a village outside in Bavaria somewhere, but you want to move to a care home in Munich, you can do that. No problem. You can go to Hamburg if you wish. You make an appointment where you would like to have what you would like to look at. Have a look at this link to find a place where they have care homes, and then make an appointment, look around. Some residencies, some old age residences don't offer to move you to a care home, meaning you can have a care level where you don't really need a permanent caretaker. You just want some emergency buttons and easily accessible medical care. That is sort of the lowest level of care. Some residencies, the residences offer that level of care, but then don't offer to move you to a level of care which is much more involved, where you need somebody to actually come to help you with daily needs. So have a look at that aspect as well. How increased can the level of care become? Ideally, if you like a place, you should not have to move to a different facility if your care level increases. I think that makes perfect sense. If you like somewhere, you don't want to have to move again if you become even more needy in terms of care. Waiting lists for any care home can be up to 2 years or longer. Put your name down if you like it somewhere. If then a place becomes available, you don't have to take it. They will continue to leave you on the waiting list. Okay. Right, what's involved in terms of cost of moving to a care home? Right, this can become quite steep, and roughly about 50% of the cost has to be covered by yourself. So this is the care insurance, the Pflegeversicherung covers 50%. And you then have to cover the rest. So cost per month, I've given you some examples. I just looked at some of these places available, and well, for 1-room apartment, if you currently live in a, I don't know, 3-room, 4-room flat, then moving to a 1-room apartment sounds a bit tough. You can get 2-room places up to 2.5 room. They cost proportionally a lot more. And this becomes very expensive. You can see straight away 4,850 for a 2 people, 2.5 room flat. And you have to cover half of that. Some very exclusive places can take you up to 6,500 a month. And you have to cover half of whatever it is. And they probably will assess, will you be able to cover that or not before they even allow you to take a place. So then it comes to what's your financial means. Your personal finances, you can keep up to 10,000 euros of your personal money, but everything else, whatever you have in pension plans, savers, funds, property you own, will have to help covering for this expense of the 50% of this cost of living in a care home. If your income and sale of assets are not sufficient, then the Sozialamt, the social services, if you basically don't have any more money, you've run out of your own funds, then the social services will jump in, but they will also assess if your kids can help. If they live in Germany or Europe, at least, they can access, you know, your kids might be called to help. Okay, next slide. So this is my final slide of the main presentation. When you have kids or people you want to gift your financial your property to, whatever it is you have, then you have to bear in mind any gifts that you make to your nearest and dearest have to be made 10 years in advance of you needing any care, to make sure that that doesn't get called back. So if you want to say today, I want to leave my house to my son or daughter, whatever, my kids, then you can do that. You can now legally gift that to your kids. But if within the next 10 years you need care, and your finances no longer cover the care you need, then social services can go to your kids and say, well, hang on a second, 5 years ago you were given this house, but now your parents need that help. We will take that gift back. So that's something you need to know and bear in mind. If you're owning property, so this is obviously covering money and funds and things you own in Europe. I don't think this will apply to things you own in the US or wherever. Gosh, this is getting very involved, maybe because I'm concerned with that topic myself. Skip on this if you're not interested. If you own property that you're letting, then nobody can force you to throw people out of the flat that you're letting. This would put tenants into hardship. So, you know, they can't force you to sell anything that somebody else is benefiting from already. It's only for gifts that they can force you to rescind within 10 years. Okay, so that's it. As I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Sabine Bowers, I'm on the membership directory. Thanks very much.